I was folding laundry in the living room when my granddaughter Julia walked in from school. It was a Thursday afternoon, around 3:30. The September sun streamed through the bay windows of our home in Meadowbrook, Connecticut. Julia dropped her backpack by the door and walked over to me with that serious expression she sometimes got. "Grandma," she said quietly, "can I stop taking the vitamins Miss Caroline gives me?" My hands froze mid-fold. The pillowcase I'd been working on slipped from my fingers onto the couch. "What vitamins, sweetheart?" I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my heart had started racing. Julia twisted the hem of her school uniform. "The lady from next door. She comes over when you're at your book club on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. She says Grandpa asked her to give me vitamins to help me grow stronger." I felt the blood drain from my face. My husband, William, had never mentioned anything about vitamins. And Miss Caroline? That was Caroline Fletcher, the young woman who'd moved into the rental house next door about 6 months ago. Tall, blonde, always wore expensive clothes that seemed too fancy for a supposedly unemployed woman living alone. "Where are these vitamins now?" I asked. "In my room. In the top drawer of my desk. Miss Caroline said it's our little secret, that Grandpa wants me to be healthy, so I shouldn't tell you because you worry too much." Every instinct in my body screamed danger. I'd raised 3 children, worked 25 years as a school nurse before retiring. I knew what manipulation looked like. "Julia, honey, go get those vitamins for me right now." She nodded and ran upstairs. I stood there in the living room, my mind racing. William and I had been married for 30 years. He was a financial consultant, worked long hours, traveled sometimes for client meetings. We'd always had a solid marriage. Or so I thought. Julia returned with a small white bottle. No label. Just a handwritten note taped to it that said, "Julia, daily vitamin, 1 per day." I unscrewed the cap and poured one into my palm. Small, round, white tablet with no markings. My nursing training kicked in. Legitimate vitamins for children usually had brand names, proper labels, dosage information. This looked like nothing I'd seen before. "Julia, how long has Miss Caroline been giving you these?" Maybe 2 months?" "She started coming over after school started. Says she and Grandpa are working on a special project together." Special project, the words made my stomach turn. "And after you take these, how do you feel?" Julia bit her lip. "Sleepy. Really sleepy. Miss Caroline says that's normal, that vitamins make you tired at first. So I take it and lie down on the couch, and when I wake up, she's usually gone." I wrapped my arms around my granddaughter and pulled her close. "You did the right thing telling me. Sweetheart, don't take any more of these, okay? And this stays between us for now." As soon as Julia went back to her room to do homework, I called my friend Dorothy, who'd been a pharmacist for 40 years before retiring. She lived 10 minutes away. "Dot, I need you to look at something. Can I come over right now?" "Of course. What's wrong?" "I'll explain when I get there." I drove to Dorothy's house, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. She met me at the door, took one look at my face, and ushered me inside. I showed her the bottle. She examined the pills carefully, even broke one in half to check the inside. "Eleanor, these aren't vitamins. I can't tell you exactly what they are without a lab test, but based on the size, shape, and the way it breaks, this looks like some kind of sedative, possibly a prescription sleep aid. Are you sure?" I'd stake my license on it. "Where did you get these?" I told her everything. About Miss Caroline, about Julia being told to keep secrets, about my husband supposedly being involved. Dorothy's face went pale. "Eleanor, you need to get these tested immediately. And you need to find out what your husband knows. But be careful. If he's involved in giving prescription medication to a child without medical need, that's criminal." I drove home in a daze. William wouldn't be back from his Hartford office until around 7. I had time to think, to plan. I put the pills in a Ziploc bag and hid them in my closet. Then I did something I'd never done in 30 years of marriage. I went through William's things. In his home office, in the bottom drawer of his desk, I found a folder labeled CL Projects. Inside were bank statements showing regular withdrawals of $500 to $1,000, marked as consulting fees. There were also printouts of text messages. I read through them, feeling sicker with each line. Messages between William and someone saved as C in his phone. Can't wait to see you Thursday. The kid will be asleep by 3:45. We'll have 2 hours. You're amazing. Never thought I could feel this way again. My hands shook. I took photos of everything with my phone, put the folder back exactly as I'd found it. That evening, William came home at 7:15, just like always, kissed my cheek, asked about my day, played with Julia before dinner. He seemed perfectly normal, happy, even. I watched him across the dinner table and wondered how I'd missed the signs. Or maybe there had been no signs. Maybe he was just that good at lying. After Julia went to bed, I sat William down in the living room. "We need to talk about Caroline Fletcher," I said. His face didn't change. "Who?" "The woman next door. The one who's been coming into our house when I'm not here." "Eleanor, I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, William. Julia told me everything. About the vitamins, about your special project together." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "Oh, that." "Yes, Caroline mentioned she's studying nutrition and asked if she could give Julia some supplements as part of a research project. I said it was fine. They're just vitamins." "They're not vitamins, they're sedatives." The color drained from his face. "What?" "I had them checked. They're prescription sleep medication. Someone has been drugging our granddaughter so she'd sleep while they did God knows what in this house." William stood up. "That's impossible. Caroline wouldn't. She said they were multivitamins for kids." "When did Caroline ask you about this?" He hesitated. "About 2 months ago. And you didn't think to mention it to me? You didn't think to check what exactly she was giving Julia?" "I trusted her." "Why? Why would you trust a stranger with our granddaughter's health?" He didn't answer. He just stood there, and in that moment, I saw the truth written all over his face. The guilt, the shame. "How long have you been having an affair with her?" I asked quietly. "Eleanor, please." "How long?" 6 months, since she moved in. I didn't mean for it to happen. "You and we've been distant lately. You're always busy with your book club, your volunteer work." I felt lonely. I laughed bitterly. "So you slept with the neighbor, and when your mistress wanted private time with you in our house, you let her drug our granddaughter. Do you understand what you've done?" "I didn't know about the sedatives." "I swear." "Get out. Eleanor, we can work through this. Get out of this house. Now. Before I call the police." He left. I heard his car start, heard him drive away. Then I sat on the couch and let myself cry for the first time in years. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Thomas Reynolds. He'd handled our wills and property documents. Now I needed him for something else. "Thomas, I need to file for divorce. And I need to report a crime." I went to the police station that afternoon. Brought the pills, brought Julia, brought all the evidence I'd gathered. The detective assigned to the case was a woman named Lisa Chen. She listened carefully, took notes, treated Julia with kindness. "Mrs. Hartley, we'll need to send these pills for lab analysis. That takes about a week. In the meantime, I want to ask your permission to set up some surveillance." "What kind of surveillance?" "We want to catch Miss Fletcher in the act. If she's been drugging a minor, that's a serious felony. But we need concrete evidence beyond the pills and your granddaughter's testimony." "What do you need from me?" "Next Thursday, when you'd normally be at book club, we want you to go as usual. But we'll have an undercover officer parked outside your house, and we'll have Julia wear a recording device. If Miss Fletcher shows up and attempts to give Julia medication, we move in and make the arrest." I looked at Julia. She was scared, I could tell. But she nodded. "I can do it, Grandma. I want to make sure she doesn't hurt other kids." Detective Chen smiled at her. "You're very brave, Julia." The week that followed was the longest of my life. I went through the motions, cooked meals, helped Julia with homework, pretended everything was normal. William called every day. I didn't answer. He sent flowers. I threw them away. He sent emails begging for another chance. I forwarded them to my lawyer. The lab results came back on Tuesday. Detective Chen called me. "Mrs. Hartley, the pills contain zolpidem, a prescription sleep medication for adults. The dosage in each pill would be enough to heavily sedate a child Julia's size for 3 to 4 hours. If she'd continued taking these, they could have caused serious liver damage, dependency, and developmental issues." I felt sick. "And Caroline Fletcher?" We ran her background. Her real name is Caroline Mitchell. She has a record in New York for fraud and identity theft. No medical credentials whatsoever. We believe she targeted your husband deliberately. Why? Money. We think she researched wealthy men in the area, found your husband, engineered a meeting, seduced him, and then used access to your home to steal valuables. We found several items missing from your home listed on online marketplaces under her accounts. I hadn't even noticed things were missing. I checked the house that evening. My grandmother's silver candlesticks, a jade figurine from our China trip, several pieces of jewelry, all gone. Thursday came. I went to book club as usual, but I couldn't focus on the discussion. My phone was in my purse, volume on high, waiting for Detective Chen's call. At 3:45 my phone rang. "We've got her, Mrs. Hartley. Come home." I drove back at twice the speed limit. There were 2 police cars in front of my house. Caroline was being led out in handcuffs, screaming that this was a mistake, that she'd done nothing wrong. Julia was sitting on the front porch with a female officer, looking small but brave. I ran to her and wrapped her in my arms. "You did so good, baby, so good." Detective Chen walked over. Julia was perfect. Miss Fletcher arrived at 3:30, let herself in with a key, gave Julia the pill, and told her to lie down. "We have everything on recording. She's being charged with child endangerment, administering controlled substances to a minor, theft, and fraud. With her record, she's looking at 5 to 10 years. And my husband? That's up to you. If you can prove he knew about the sedatives, we can charge him as an accessory, but Julia's testimony suggests he genuinely didn't know. He didn't know about the drugs, but he knew about the affair. He gave his mistress access to our home where our granddaughter lives. That's enough for me. The divorce took 6 months. William tried to fight it at first, hired an expensive lawyer, claimed temporary insanity. But I had all the evidence, the affair, the financial records, the fact that his negligence had put Julia in danger. The judge awarded me the house, primary custody of Julia, and 60% of our assets. William got visitation rights every other weekend, supervised for the first 6 months. Caroline Mitchell pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence of 6 years. She admitted everything. She'd researched wealthy men, found William through a business directory, rented the house next door specifically to get close to him. The pills were meant to keep Julia asleep so she could steal from our house and have private time with William. She'd stolen over $30,000 worth of items in 2 months. Julia had nightmares for a while, worried that the bad lady would come back. We went to therapy together. Dr. Sarah Kim helped us both process the trauma. Slowly, Julia began to heal. She stopped being afraid to be home alone. Started smiling again. Made new friends at school. As for me, I threw myself into my volunteer work. I started a program at the local school teaching children about medicine safety, about trusting their instincts when adults ask them to keep secrets. 2 years after the divorce, I met Robert at a community gardening event. He was a retired teacher, widowed 3 years earlier, kind eyes and a gentle smile. We started as friends. He helped me plant tomatoes. I helped him organize his late wife's book collection. One day, Julia asked me, "Grandma, is Mr. Robert your boyfriend?" I laughed. "Would that be okay with you?" She thought about it seriously. "I think so. He's nice. And he doesn't lie." That was her measure of a good person now. Someone who doesn't lie. Robert and I dated for a year before he proposed. Nothing fancy. Just the 2 of us in his garden on a Sunday morning, him holding a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "I know we're old," he said, "and we've both had our share of heartbreak. But I love you, Eleanor. I love Julia. I want to spend whatever time I have left making you both happy." I said yes. We got married in the backyard of our house. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Julia was my maid of honor, wearing a lilac dress she'd picked out herself. Robert moved into the house. He converted William's old office into a reading room for Julia, built floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, put in a window seat with cushions. Julia spent hours in there, reading adventure stories and mysteries. Life became peaceful. Robert retired completely and spent his days cooking, gardening, volunteering at the library. I continued my medicine safety program. Julia thrived in school, made honor roll, joined the debate team. Sometimes I still think about that Thursday afternoon when Julia asked me about the vitamins. What if she hadn't spoken up? What if she'd kept taking those pills? I pushed those thoughts away. She was brave, she trusted me, and I protected her. That's what matters. Now Julia is 17, applying to colleges. She wants to study criminal justice, says she wants to protect other kids the way Detective Chen protected her. Robert and I sit on the porch some evenings, watching Julia walk the dog around the neighborhood. She's confident now, strong, unafraid. You raised her well, Robert says. We're raising her well, I correct him. He takes my hand. We sit in comfortable silence as the sun sets over Meadowbrook. I think about William sometimes. He remarried last year. A woman from his office. I heard through mutual friends that he's trying to rebuild his life. I don't wish him ill. I just don't think about him much anymore. The scars from that time have faded. Julia and I talk about it sometimes. She asks questions. I answer honestly. We've learned that honesty is the foundation of everything. Without it, there's nothing. Last month, Julia came home with a permission slip for a field trip to the State Police Academy. She wanted me to sign it. At the bottom, in her neat handwriting, she'd written, "My grandmother taught me to trust my instincts and speak up when something feels wrong. That lesson saved my life. Now I want to help others do the same." I signed the form with tears in my eyes. This is my story. A story of betrayal, yes. But more importantly, a story of resilience. Of a granddaughter brave enough to speak up. Of a grandmother determined to protect her. Of second chances and new beginnings. Did you like the story? Let me know where you're listening from in the comments. And if you want to support me in creating more stories like this, you can send a super thanks. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next story.